and welcome. Well, today we are looking at the mental state of Ghana. Now, you know, it's one subject that if this producer gives it to me 5 days a week, I'll be very happy to do it because I am so passionate about it. Now, they said in Ghana, only 2 out of every 100 people would receive adequate and efficient mental health whenever needed. So then what happens to the 98 that will be left? And indeed, as you can see, even wrongful imprisonment is not spared of those who are mentally ill. As a society, we still haven't come to terms as to how to treat brothers and sisters or mothers who would have any mental challenges, and we are still battling on. And the resources that go into that sector is so meager that even basic adequate medication, which they would have needed, is still running short. We just want to find out what the state is as it is, and then how we can build upon it. My name is Nana Ansakwao, and this is PM Express. When I come, I'll introduce my guest. Hello, and thank you very much for staying. We're looking at the mental state of Ghana. Now, because it becomes very uncomfortable for families to deal with, we sometimes don't even want to talk about it. We move further to exclude those who may suffer any slightest hint. It could be the faintest slight of autism, and that's it. You're locked away, and nobody wants to know. My brother did Seth Kwame Boateng did a documentary called Locked and Forgotten, and in there was a lady who was also suffering in mental health who had been locked away. And had it not been the documentary which Seth Kwame Boateng did, she probably would have been languished in there suffering instead of receiving health. I want to say thank you very much to Dr. Osei Asare. At this hour, it's only God and country that lets you come out here. So, Doc, thank you very much.
A pleasure.
After a long day's work. And Humphrey Kofi, thank you very much too, Executive Secretary for the Mental Health Association of Ghana. And indeed, Doctor is the Chief Psychiatric of the Ghana Medical Health. Ministry of Health. So thank you very much, guys. Doctor, I want to start with you. First of all, I want to look at sort of the infrastructure, the ratios that we have. I mean, how many doctors, how many hospitals, how many nurses do we have supporting mental health for all of us? And I believe that by now we should be about 27 million at least.
Well, thank you very much, and good evening to viewers. Well, that is in Cree they say well, it's not really a good situation. We are talking about of 3 psychiatric hospitals, all down south at the coast: Accra Psychiatric Hospital, Ankafo, and Pantan. So you realize all these are down south. So if you move upwards, we don't have any psychiatric hospital there, any public psychiatric hospital. We talk about the workforce. But before that, let me say that now we are making efforts, but maybe let me reserve the efforts we are making. So let me just talk about the situation as it is now. But you talk about human resource, we have only 12 practicing psychiatrists in the whole country.
12.
These issues you've mentioned a lot of times. 12 practicing psychiatrists, total of 22 in the country, but 10 are retired and other enjoying their retirement and whatnot. But only 12 are in active practice.
All in public service or some private? 12.
Private, just 2. In fact, 1 retiree is in private practice. Or let's say 2 in private practice. 1 person not really retired is in active service, but it's in private practice. But the others...
So between the 3 hospitals, you have 12 doctors?
Not only, the 3 hospitals plus a few in the regions.
Okay.
Yeah, so we have 12 practicing psychiatrists. And so that is really horrible. You mentioned 27 million Ghanaians. So that means 1 psychiatrist is attending to more than 2 million Ghanaians, which is terribly horrible. You talk about psychiatric nurses, just about 2,000 psychiatric nurses, when this country requires not less than 20,000 psychiatric nurses. Clinical psychologists, 36 in the public sector, and yet this country should have not less than 80 to 100 clinical psychologists. Occupational therapists, those who assist us to be able to use handiwork training and craft and whatnot to be able to attend to the needs of the mentally ill. We don't have a single occupational therapist in the country. We don't even have one. Well, the only one we have actually is not in practice, it's at the university. But in practice, at the public sector, we don't have a single one. But the core mental health personnel that we require for adequate treatment of mental health care, we require the psychiatrist, as a doctor, psychiatrist, we require the psychiatric nurse, the clinical psychologist, the social welfare officer, and occupational therapist. So without this complement of staff, of course, we have other staff that are required, but these are the core. So without the full complement of the core staff, you really are terribly handicapped. That's with respect to human resource, very terrible, as I've mentioned. You go to other logistics, other things, financing, terrible. You don't have enough money. Now people may not be hearing me lamenting a lot. I'll come to why I'm not lamenting so much, because there is a little hope at the end of the tunnel. But financing has been terrible. You don't have enough money to attend to the needs. You talk about medications. You don't have medicines that you want to give to the patients for them to improve. And a whole lot of things. But as I said, I don't lament disease the way I lamented in the past, because there's a hope. And the hope is that we have put structures, which later we'll discuss, to be able to alleviate the situation and give a new kind of mental health care, different from what we are having now. And all this will bear fruits in due course. So with that, we are really focused that things will change. So we are not so much lamenting. Now, our efforts are how do we put those structures in place so that all these difficulties and the challenges you've mentioned will be taken care of.
But at least you painted a picture that
that's right.
This is what is there that awaits us. Humphrey, I'll let you take a bite at this cherry, because as Executive Secretary for the Society, you must be facing these challenges. I mean, how bad? See, sometimes something sounds bad when you say it, but you get on the ground and you can maneuver your way left or right. How bad is it out there?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nana, and good evening to viewers as well. Indeed, Dr. Osei has mentioned quite a number of those issues that have made mental health so bad in the country. The issue of finances, yes. The issue of medicines. It's become a perennial problem where medicines are made available for people with mental disorders that are supposed to be provided at the psychiatric units of the various polyclinics, as well as the institutions that these people are admitted. Over the period, there have been so much shortage, and it's regular. The problem we have tried to investigate as to whether it's the contracting process that has delayed, or it's to do with the resources that is not available. Sometimes we do hear that it's contracted, but it was done at a later hour, whether or not we were not sure as the stocks were running out until they ran out entirely. And these medicines are supposed to be taken by the people with mental disorders over a period until the doctor takes them off the medicine. So if there is a break at a point in time, it makes them it makes their stability very much slow. And more so, when there is none at all, then they go back into their old state. Now, taking another dose of medicine to recover to that same state becomes quite difficult, because if the person relapses for a long time, then the person poses a danger to himself and to society. And I mean, I don't think we're going to talk about it, but the gentleman we are talking about who went to the president's church, I mean, from what we have gathered, there's ample evidence to show that this person was suffering from some mental health disorder. Now, as to whether he has been able to access quality mental health care is another question that we all have to be concerned about. Because indeed, if you sit in a commercial vehicle, you don't know whom you are sitting by. If you are passing by somebody, you don't know whom you are passing by. If you sit in a taxi being driven by somebody, you don't even know the state of mind of that person. If somebody can premeditate and do something like this, then it means that we are all not safe. Because if I don't know what is in your mind and I don't know what you are, and I'm sitting by you and you can do anything to me at any time, then we are all not safe in this country. So mental health is an issue that has over the years been rubbished under the carpet. But I think that it's beginning to see some light, though, but still the situation is not better at all.
Doctor, our attitude towards mental health today, could it be because that maybe historically, maybe we're not suffering from it? Because, I mean, I've heard so many Anansi stories, so many stories, and kings and chiefs and tribal wars, and Abakosem plenty, and there's no wonder they said, oh, and there was this person who was mentally ill, or there was that person. It doesn't appear in our stories. Could it be that we didn't suffer from it, and therefore we just can't accept it as a new disease now coming upon us?
Well, mental illness has been with us all along. Somebody said, immediately God created man, the mental illness became part of society. So mental illness has been with us all along, but we've been in denial. But let me say that what we have in our part of the world is really not new in the world as such. Other societies have gone through that. But they have managed to recognize that, well, that is a phase of life. You need to get over that. Just as there was a time, malaria, in our part of the world, we took malaria to be bad air. In fact, malaria itself means malaria, bad air. So that's how we understood it. And now science moved further, that it's not bad air as such, but a certain mosquito bites you and pushes some parasite into you, and then you get the malaria. We accepted it, and now there is treatment. The difference is that the society accepted it, and so they moved on with time. Those days, again, as I said, in the past, in Europe and whatnot, they all took mental illness to be witchcraft, juju, well, maybe they didn't know juju, but witchcraft, spiritual problems and whatnot. And so they also whipped them, they flogged them, they starved them and whatever it is. But with time, science got to understand what mental illness is, and the society moved with it over there. But we are very slow in accepting developments in science. So we still think that mental illness is a spiritual problem, a certain witch, or the effect of witchcraft, or juju, whatever it is. And so we have not moved with it. Even as we recognize that, well, at least now I don't need to move from Accra to Kumasi by foot, or on foot. I will take the vehicle. I'll benefit from the development science has brought me. But in terms of mental illness, we don't want to accept it. In terms of physical illness, diabetes, pneumonia, whatever, we accept that this is a condition that is treatable. Science has brought us treatment. We accept. But it comes to mental illness, we are not prepared to accept it. So our kind of supernatural, trying to avoid superstitious, but our supernatural beliefs about these things, actually these are the things that are keeping us not really to move with time. So it is our belief, that is it. I don't blame anybody, but we need to appreciate it, because not until we realize it, we will still remain where we are. So our belief system is part of it. Now this also brings in issues of stigma. So we really don't understand mental illness, and we seem not prepared to understand it. So our fear, without the knowledge of what exactly it is, then it brings in our fear of the condition, and then we stigmatize against them. So the stigma for mental health and mental illness also prevents us from giving the proper attention. And the stigma is not just that my brother or friend has mental illness, so I don't want to go near him. But even in the minds of policymakers, that stigma makes us give very low priority attention to mental illness. So after you've given whatever consideration to other conditions, then it comes to mental illness.
Doc.
Then the stigma even goes the way we describe them and whatnot, the media, abodan for. So this is it's a complex of issues. But again, with time, as we begin to recognize it and we develop as a society, I'm sure you'll get there.
Doc, so I dare say that with the available of information today, with the available of degrees and doctors and everything, if we are still holding on to this, then I dare say the majority of us are mad. I mean, quote and unquote. I mean, you must have a mental condition not to accept that this is not spiritual, and therefore don't go to a prayer camp, but bring Dr. Akwesi and let him look after you. I mean, we must have a mental condition not to be able to break away from it.
Not necessarily, I wouldn't say so, but it's deep-seated superstition in our minds. That is not tantamount to mental illness per se, but it's a certain fixation. We are religious, we are spiritual. That's very good, no doubt about it. But we tend to take our spirituality too far. We tend to take our spirituality to the point that somebody will tell you that, let me bath, and the water I've used to bath, take it to drink, and you'll be fine. And people do that. Educated people, they do it. This is not mental illness on the part of the person, but so much superstition. And this is really what is, I mean, just go back to this guy that you talk about, somebody who has struggled to go abroad, and then he develops mental illness there, and then the immediate reaction by the family members is, "If fear for Nayanasa." They don't want him to be well, so he's managed to go there, so they are using African electronics to make him mentally ill. And so he comes back, they will not go and look for proper orthodox treatment, they will take him around spiritualists and the traditional healers and whatnot. So this is the kind of situation. And maybe you and I, the way, if you were also to get into that situation, you and I, you don't realize your relatives might take you there, and before you realize, we will find ourselves there. So it's a deep-seated superstition, and we need to find a way of approaching it. I must say that, well, I must say that the vanguards of our spirituality, the clergy, sometimes they are also to blame, because the way they brainwash and push all kinds of things into our minds, that certainly is not good enough. But we need to be empowered to be able to decipher true spirituality from superstition.
Humphrey, I mean, we must be in big trouble if, I mean, this situation where this guy goes to court and, you know, one after the other, he's picked up, goes to BNI, comes to the police, goes to the court, prosecution, and not any of these society, you know, sectors say, no, hold on, there's something not right here. Let's find him help. That's quite serious on our part.
Yeah, Nana, you're right. Immediately this happened, actually, we, both the Mental Health Society of Ghana and basically issued a press statement to that effect. And we were very much convinced, having gathered enough information through our partners in the Brunhafo region where his family is rooted, that the guy has a mental health condition. I mean, everything showed in terms of his own peers, his own family members, the taxi rank area where he was actually driving. We have gathered enough information prior to even the call for him to relook at the case by the Attorney General and other stakeholders. So we were very certain. But you see, the African belief is so strong that if somebody is suffering from such mental health condition, the first place of call is either the prayer camp or the faith-based organization or the traditional healer. Even if he doesn't go there for the first time, after he's sought orthodox medication, he'll go back there and find out whether or not there was something to do with superstition, whether our ancestors or his ancestors did something and he's paying for. So it's so rooted that families don't want the public to know that they have such mental health conditions.
Let me just come in, Humphrey. I mean, a judge at the court is very well read, isn't he? I mean, you don't just become a judge from SS. You must have gone through and read a lot. And I'm sure there are cases in court where you've read where, you know, for mental health reasons, people did not come through the normal channel. I mean, so how can a judge miss that?
Well, that is also an interesting area. And that's why we were so convinced that, look, the person, if you listen to him, was suffering from some level of delusion. At a point in time, he said, when the late president passed away, he was the one to be reinstated. I mean, ab initio, nobody needs to tell you that this person has a problem. I mean, you don't need a psychiatrist to tell you that there was a problem with this gentleman. If you listen to the part of it where he said he was guilty, at a point he said he was not guilty, then he had to say, agree at a point in time, all that. This tells you the incoherence and how he's able to coordinate his thought, whether or not he's even coordinating his thought. Because if you listen to what he was saying, there was no coherence in his flow. So we were so very much convinced that the issue had to be re-looked at. So we are happy that at least the case is going to be recalled, and then we will see how it goes through. But most of the time, such conditions, the judges will refer to the psychiatric hospital for further investigation to rule out any possibility of mental ill health.
I mean, Doc, I mean, you were on the show and you promised to, you know, just pursue it a bit further. How far has it gotten to?
Well, it's being pursued. It's in court now, and because of that, and also because I represent an interested party, I won't comment too much, otherwise it becomes contempt. Sure. But it's in court, and Monday we are going to have a judgment on that. But just to take it generally, I think it still comes to the point that we need to get the education to go down across the spectrum. Education on mental health and mental illness, so people get to understand or even begin to suspect. The point is that very often, especially in schools, the teachers may be the first people to recognize that this child has a mental health problem, even before the mother or the parents. So we need to give the education to teachers, for instance, so that they can pick it, recognize it. At the courtroom, the judges, the lawyers may be the first to recognize that this person has a mental health problem. So we need to give the education to them. The policemen, a crime has occurred, and they go to the scene. They will maybe the first people to recognize that this person has a mental health problem, and so we need to give the education to them. And that, so across we need to give the education so people will begin to recognize it. Elsewhere, as I said, I've said a number of times, somebody may go to a policeman or the police station and say, the plane crash that happened 3 days ago, the tsunami that happened, I caused it. And the police will recognize that there is something wrong because of their training, their understanding, and they will take the person to the hospital. In our case, a family member dies, and then he will go to the priest or the shrine that I killed this person. What would they say? You are a witch, you are a wizard. So we need to get the education to go down across the spectrum for people to recognize, to understand. A lot of these things that we call social vices and whatnot that we don't understand, anything that goes beyond your understanding, the bottom line could be there could be some mental illness at the back of it. So a certain heinous crime occurs, let's immediately suspect that there's a possibility of mental illness. Something that normally you would not do, somebody does, let's begin to suspect that there could be some mental illness. And this is the education that if you take it there, I'm sure these errors may not
Stories like man comes home, drags baby and chops off the baby's head, and because wife didn't cook for him. Are you saying these things we should look further?
We certainly should look further. We should not just take it as a crime. Fine, of course, you've cut somebody's head. It's a crime, no doubt about it, at least to the layman. Mm-hmm. But the point is that because there is a strong possibility of, any heinous, something that you would not expect anybody to do, it should arouse your suspicion that there could be mental illness behind it. And therefore, such a person should be taken through mental health assessment. That's the point. So we are not necessarily saying that every crime has a mental illness behind it. But a lot of crimes, and very serious ones, we need to do assessment. And that even brings in the point that as we move forward, you will need to get clinical psychiatrists to be attached to the courts. So there and then they could recognize that there is something going on wrong, and then they give the initial or first aid kind of assessment. So that becomes very important.
Doc, averagely, how many people would suffer mental, I don't know, like maybe 10%, 12%, how many people suffer one form of a mental illness?
Well, what we say, and that is very true, worldwide and also in Ghana, for every 5 people you see randomly, every 5, one person, one of the 5, the chances are that that one person has a mental illness.
Wow.
But I'm not saying that that one person is mad.
No.
Mm-hmm. Because mental illness is not necessarily the same as madness. There are different degrees. Now, of the remaining 4, I said 5, one most likely has. Of the remaining 4, one will have it before the person dies in his lifetime. For every 5, one person has a mental illness already, most likely. The remaining 4, one will have at some point in time before the person dies. And this is a worldwide phenomenon. If you come to Ghana, for instance, we have statistics that give similar impression. A study was done some time back, about 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and the researchers just found...
So there's 5 of us in the room here. There's 2 cameramen, and now I'm very concerned.
Okay, so, but if you want to know who that 5th person is, don't start counting from yourself. Start counting from the other.
It's likely to be you.
Now, so the researchers studied 10,000 Ghanaians. They were looking at their psychological distress, and they realized that 41% of the 10,000, and 10,000 by any standard is a huge study. So you can fairly generalize to the whole population. 41% Kenyans had one form of mental psychological distress or the other. Of the 41, 19% had moderate to severe. And that moderate to severe comes to about saying that they have mental disorder. 90%. So that's roughly 1 in 5.
So that could be what? Maybe anger, problems?
Not just anger. We can all be angry. but to the point that this is not just ordinary anger. If you offend me or you insult me, it's natural for me to get a little irritated, natural. But something that should not irritate anybody, and I get irritated, obviously there's something wrong. And if you are under distress, psychological distress, that's it. You become very easily irritable. Things that should not irritate you get easily irritable. It disturbs your sleep. It disturbs your perception, the way you see external reality. If it's very severe, it gets completely distorted. Nobody is talking to you, but you may be hearing voices. Nobody is there for you to see, but you may be seeing strange things. And then your behavior may begin to change, and then may be aggressive and whatnot. All these are issues that will come.
But you address properly.
Well, mental illness has different forms. There is the type that you could be well dressed, neat, everything, and yet you open your mouth to talk, everybody sees clearly there's something wrong. Or there could also be the type where your dress is dirty, unkempt, but you can talk very rationally. And I keep saying that if you master the courage and accosted anybody mentally ill, obviously mentally ill on the streets, for every 3 people you accost, 1 of them can talk rationally to you and can even give you solutions to your own problems. So then that means you should not just think that everybody neatly dressed is nice, or if you are mentally ill, you can reason rationally. That is wrong. It depends on the type of mental illness, which part of the brain is affected.
No, sorry to, but what we always wait for those who strip before we say, oh, this is it. We seem to always wait. So if you don't strip, maybe we won't find help for you. You know. So, and what causes them to strip, and why do we always wait for them to strip?
To start with, let me say mental illness is not one entity. If I say malaria largely is one entity, pneumonia largely one entity. Even if you go further, you can find subtypes, but largely pneumonia is one entity. If you say fever, it's not one entity. Fever, you have malaria, you can get fever, typhoid, you can get fever, and what knows and what knows. Mental illness is similar to that. So when you say somebody has mental illness, we are not talking about one entity. Different kinds of conditions. Now, depending on the type of condition, you present it differently. So one type of condition might be mild enough, what you call minor mental disorder. That one, only the person recognizes he has a problem. You see him, you don't recognize he has a problem. Such a person, for instance, one type we call the OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder. Somebody might just feel their hands are dirty, and he'll wash a number of times. After washing, oh, it's still dirty. He can wash and wash repeatedly 20 times. Somebody may even say that if I go outside and I shake hands with people, my hands will get dirty, so I'll wear gloves. Obsessive compulsive disorder, quite a common one. You might open your door, or you are going to work, you close your door, you take a few steps, it looks like I didn't close the door. You go back, you check, it's locked. Then you go further, it looks like I didn't lock it. You go back. Let me not say, I'm saying...
You're scaring my viewers. Now they're all seeing the traits.
It's not to say that you have it once, then you are mentally ill. But that keeps repeatedly, and it can go on for 20 times. Eventually, you overcome it, you go to work. Nobody sees anything wrong. You are fine, but you have a condition. That is a mental disorder, but it's a minor one. So a whole lot of things that are minor disorders. So this one, you sitting near him will not see, but he knows it. And then there's a severe form, which he himself will not know there's a problem, but you will know. That may be the time in which he strips naked. You think if they knew that they were naked, they wouldn't go and find something to wear. They don't recognize it, that they are naked. He may drink from the water from the drainage. He doesn't recognize there's anything wrong, but you see that is wrong. But he doesn't recognize it because the nature of his illness, the severity, has impaired his ability to know that this is wrong. So the mind has different functions, and one function, depending on the illness affecting it, may then disorder his behavior or his attitude, and other functions which are intact, he may then work normally.
Humphrey, and we have 12 doctors to confront all this.
That's serious.
You have a big challenge on your hands.
Big one. And you see, what doctor is saying, most of the cases of mental disorder that we have in terms of the statistics are not those who are on the streets, who have stripped naked, who are the vagrants that we see. Most of them are in the offices. Those of them are working. Most of them are drivers. Most of them are in the market centers. So, I mean, those are the people who either are aware that they are suffering from a condition or are not aware at all. You know, because you sometimes will also hear some cases of suicide, that people commit suicide. And one of the things that are in our laws that we need to really expound is the fact that the Section 102 of our Criminal Offences Act criminates anybody who attempts to take his life and is not successful. The person who attempts to take his life has a condition, but the law unfortunately does not address the issue of the condition. The law is looking at what did you attempt taking away your life. But in recent times, the suicide cases are rising. The teenagers are taking away their lives. I recall, I think in the past 2 weeks, some few JSS people that I heard, I mean, took their life just like that. These have mental health underpinnings that we need to really look at and not take it for granted that he thought that the world was uncomfortable for him to live. There are several underpinnings that we need to really study.
I'm going to take a break. When I come back, now I have a condition where sometimes, I dial the number and it's ringing, and then I have to look and see, hey, who am I calling? Because between the time of dialing and listening, I've forgotten who I was calling. Okay, yeah, I was calling him. Sometimes they pick and I say, you know what? I don't know why I called you. So if you don't mind, I will call you back. Now I'm clearly, I need to go see doctor. Then I need to find out. Doctor says I've stopped jumping up and down because there's light ahead. Let's see what light is it that's coming. Don't move. Well, doctor was diagnosing me behind the scenes, but I will diagnose it publicly because I know, particularly in my family, I think it's a hereditary thing. Before the break, I was, sharing my condition that, sometimes I dial a number and I'm listening and then I have to look to find out who is it I was calling. And sometimes they come on the phone and say, look, let me call you back because now I can't even remember why I called you. Or sometimes I call, guy I live with, say, look, come to my room. He comes there and says, look, I've forgotten why I called you. He turns around and says, I need some hot water for tea. Hey, doctor, I might be a candidate.
Well, not necessarily. So you are describing forgetfulness or poor memory. Many things can lead to memory loss or memory failure. A good number of them are just normal. Some are a pointer to a more serious condition. The normal thing, for instance, as you grow older, your memory is no longer as sharp as it used to be. So some things you used to remember when you were younger and you are now no longer remembering, you may say, oh, now there's something wrong. It might be just an aging process. And again, as you get older, you get to be more preoccupied with a whole lot of things. When you were younger, you had probably just your schooling alone to attend to. Now you have so many things to attend to. So to speak, the various issues don't have places to fit very well in your mind. So you can tend to be a little forgetful. All that is normal. Again, if you are not interested in any particular thing, you can't really concentrate. So as you lose interest here and focus more, you tend to forget those areas. So again, that is normal. But there is a kind of memory loss or forgetfulness that could be a pointer to something more serious, like depression. If you are getting depressed, one of the features you may see will be forgetfulness. So because you are not interested in many things, everything looks down, negative. You may even be wishing you were dead. So you tend then not to remember. So that could be a pointer. But then it's not just the forgetfulness per se. You look at other things like your sleep pattern, your appetite, a whole lot of things before you say that memory loss is from depression. Another condition, dementia. If your brain is beginning to behave like a child, if the brain is dementing, some cells are becoming dead, so to speak. Again, it affects your memory. And if it gets to a certain point, then you may even forget your own name, you may forget your relatives, you see some of your wife, you may even not remember the wife. You tend to claim that people have stolen your items because you have actually misplaced it. It's not that they are stolen. So all these are pointers, but the bottom line is that the severity will tell us the circumstance and other things you see about you that will let us know that this memory is a normal memory loss, so don't worry, or it's an indicator to something more sinister. So,
Well, I think mine is too many things to do. I need to write for, that's my opinion. I need to read for PM Express. I need to think of Eduma. I need to do, I think mine is a lot of things, so I cannot remember.
That's right.
You giving me a cup of tea. So I think I'm fine.
You're fine.
Yeah, I think I'm fine. I'm out of the 5. I'm out of the 5. So Humphrey, you know, Mental Health Society of Ghana, how are you operating? Because where are you getting any help from?
Well, we have been getting some support from some few donors, including DFID or UK Aid through Basic Needs Ghana. We have also been getting some funding from the United Nations Fund for Victims of Torture. We have also, in recent times, tried to establish some links with Danida or the Danish government for funding. It's been quite difficult though, but we are doing the best that we can to get the necessary assistance to be able to support our members.
Doc, your hope and the light at the end of the tunnel, I'm sure with the gory story that we have painted, we will want to all, tap into this hope.
Yeah, the hope is a lot. I have been saying that I'm an unrepentant optimist, even though of late sometimes I seem to be shaking a little bit, but I'm generally optimistic. Now, the reason for my optimism, for the hope, is that we have now crafted the mental health law, and the government has been gracious enough to pass it since 2012. It took us 8 good years, all of us, Basic Needs, MESOG, civil society, the media, and eventually the government passed it. And it took a little while, even after passing, for the governing body, the mental health board, to be formed. It's been formed now, so we are beginning to operationalize the law. Obviously, it won't be an overnight affair. We will have challenges, teething problems and whatnot. But as we are able to put the law, the provisions of the law in place, the human resource issue that we talked about, we were lamenting, will be resolved. In fact, the law has a mechanism, funding mechanism within it, by which very shortly Parliament will decide whether to establish a new levy, mental health levy, or take part of existing levy. So whichever decision they take, once they take that decision, you will have a constant flow of money into the mental health fund. And then the board also can do fundraising activities, research grants, philanthropies, benevolent organizations and whatnot, so that you will have constant flow of money into the fund. Then the issue of no money will no longer be there. So that gives us a lot of hope. All that will be fully encapsulated in the ALI legislative instrument, which hopefully will come out before the end of the year, because we've done all the Attorney General has done all the preparatory work. And then also, the law will ensure that we are able to establish facilities at various places. Now, I mentioned earlier that there are only 3 psychiatric hospitals. These are huge facilities. We are going to build more facilities, but not as huge as we have them. Because the new direction of mental health care is community-oriented, to reduce or to remove emphasis from institutional care, huge institutions, and move into the community. So every regional hospital will have a psychiatric wing to take care of about where they need, 10 to 20 inpatients, psychiatric wing, every region, and there are 10 regions. And then every district hospital will also be attending to psychiatric patients and will have dedicated beds within their general wards, 2 to 5 beds. So that you realize that you will be attending to the needs of mental health patients all over the country, and you'll train personnel to man all these centers. In addition, you will build small facilities, 40 to 50 beds, strategically in the regions, and downsize the 3 psychiatric hospitals we have. So Accra, if it's going to remain where it is now, it will be downsized from the current number, we have about 450 to just about 200 or 300. Pantan will reduce the numbers from the current 200 to 300 to just about 200. Pantan will reduce to just about 100. And then you will set the resources into the community. So you will have 40 to 50 beds, psychiatric facilities in every psychiatric hospitals in every region. Initially, we are, of course, you will not have the money to put all 10 in the regions, but you will build maybe 1 at a time. If you realize that we've built maybe 1 in the middle belt, 1 in the northern belt, and we are able to attend to the needs, we don't need to build any more, we won't. But that is the direction. So you'll be spreading services nationwide, small, and a lot more in the community. You'll train people to be in the community, to attend to them even in their homes, to do follow-up. And then medications, with the fund established, you'll be able to procure your own medicines. So all these are things that in the next 5 years, mental health care will be very different. plus public education, a lot of media education, so that people will not just describe anybody on the street, what about them? We will know how to refine our terms. All these make a lot of difference in terms of how the patients even recover. So all these are issues that really, really gladden, they make us happy that there's a big light at the end of the tunnel.
Humphrey, would you give a new challenge where, I mean, if families were to take their, family members to hospital, and it's not tucked away somewhere, it's now in the middle of the community, or even if we came to the same hospital, but if you turn left, it says mental health, if you turn right, that's malaria health, everybody would just turn right, and if nobody's looking, quickly come left. I mean, would they have that challenge in bringing their patients?
Well, I think that it's an improvement of the previous, where if you enter the Accra Psychiatric Hospital, or you even stood by the gate or the main road, anybody who passes who knows you will definitely call somebody and ask whether you're fine, because where he found you, he's not too sure. At least with these regional hospitals, when you enter, though there will be directions as to which area, if you want to go, you have to find out. But it will not necessarily show that the fact that the arrows are pointing to the left, it has the dental section, it has the psychiatric. If you take the left, it means that it's going to be difficult unless you follow up the person and ensure that he enters a particular room. So it's easier for integration, and it's easier for the stigma to also get reduced, which is better than in the institutional situation where if you had to go to Ankafu or Pantan or Accra Psychiatric Hospital, then once you are coming from there, reintegration even into society becomes difficult, because you would have been hospitalized, and the community would definitely know that you've been out of town for some time. And once they find out that you were in the Accra Psychiatric Hospital or Pantai, then you are so stigmatized, including your family. But this new, direction provides at least a significant reduction of stigma, where people will not necessarily be able to figure out where exactly you have been to in a facility.
Doc, okay. You wanted
there are two other things that will help with the new direction that we are moving. The traditional healers, the prayer camps and whatnot, we are not going to close them down. We are going to recognize that they are playing a role. The only thing is that we will train them to be able to play the role better than they're doing now. And avoid the whipping, the flogging, the starving, and the chaining them, whatnot. So we will train them, give them proper training for them to recognize that, yes, you are partners with us. You can't put them in chains. That is human rights abuse. All that will be done, so they'll be really partners, and they'll do it very... Right now, those are some of the things that are really, really making our mental health care worldwide very poor, seem very poor. So that will be done. Then you also have structures that will go around to make sure that all these we've mentioned are really working. Like you'll have tribunal, mental health tribunal, by which if anybody really flagrantly abuses the right of a mentally ill, the tribunal can come in to correct it. And you'll have visiting committees that will go around everywhere to make sure that nobody abuses anybody's rights. So these are beautiful things that, as we implement them, things will change.
Doc, realistically, what's the success rate of healing when you have a mental condition? I mean, are you doomed, or there's light at the end of the tunnel if you have a condition? I know it's an unfair question because there are so many different types of mental condition, but generally, I mean, like malaria, you know that, if I take my medicine, I'll be okay, or if I take my antibiotics, I'll be fine. With mental condition, what are the success rates?
Very high success rate, but I'll let, for the purpose, just as you said, let me just put them in categories. For this purpose, let me even talk about malaria. We all know malaria can be treated, but it's not everybody who goes to the hospital with malaria and comes back.
No.
Some people go, they die.
Yeah.
So it depends on how long the condition has been with you. It depends on your own background, your immunity. And it depends on the amount of malaria that you have within you. So in the same way, mental illness, depending on the type of mental illness you have, how long you've had it, and then your own previous background, all that will determine. So generally, you say for about 70%, 60 to 70%, or let's say, if you are really going by the instructions, medicines are there, everything, about 60% to 70% can be well, and they will no longer require treatment at some point in time.
That high.
We can withdraw. I remember I saw, when I started my training, one person I So that was some 30 years ago. And after some 20 years, I hadn't seen him. And when I saw him, I recognized him. He couldn't recognize me. And when I reminded him of this, he said, "Oh, doctor." So I said, "What has happened to you all along?" He said, "Well, I've been fine 20 years. He's never had it again." And he's not on treatment. So for some 60 to 70%, once they take the medication religiously, per instructions and whatnot, they can improve and they may never require it. Some about 30% will improve, but they will require medication throughout. If they stop it, it will come. For a few small percentage, maybe about 10 to 5%, the condition might not improve even on medication. They are resistant. For some, they might even require an operation. Maybe there's a tumor in the brain that requires removal. Until then, you cannot help, or some genetic problem from the genes and whatnot. But generally, if you take it some 60 to 70, 30 to 20, and maybe just 5 to 10. 5 to 10 may not even do well, no matter what, because they have a genetic problem or brain problem, or it started from infancy and you can't help it. But the majority, if they take the instructions, they'll be well. The only problem with them, and I must emphasize, why you may not get 70% in practice, is that unlike malaria, you take it for 3 days, you are fine. So you can afford to take your medicines for 3 days. Even take your chest infection, and you've been told to take your antibiotics for 5 days. You take it after 2 days, you are fine. You don't feel like continuing, and you solve it. How much more this condition that you may take it for some 6 months or 1 year? So many people stop it, and then they relapse. But if they take it judiciously and they come for follow-up and whatnot, about 60 to 70% can be well, and we can take them off medication, and they'll be fine forever.
Let me quickly take a break there. I've enjoyed the conversation so much, I've forgotten to take the break. I'm going to take the break here and quickly come in. Number one, I want to find out if I'm hearing things and stuff. I mean, can I take a medication to stop me from hearing things? So I'm hearing it. If I swallow a tablet, I'm probably going to hear it louder, or I don't know, but I'm sure doctor will explain it to us. And if I'm depressed, I mean, we don't take people. I mean, what do you mean you're depressed? We treat me or the papa. I mean, you know. So how do we deal with all this? Stay tuned. I'm coming. The mental state of Ghana, and I'm talking to Dr. Osei Asare and Humphrey Kofi. Doc, you were talking about the success rate, and then I wanted you to finish on that, and then I want to find out if I'm hearing things. I mean, can you give me tablets to stop hearing? I mean, I'm hearing it.
Yeah, so going back to the success rate, I hope I mentioned that it also depends on the type of condition. For instance, if you have schizophrenia, then the success rate may not be that high. If you have a minor condition like panic, you feel panicky, you are anxious, then the success rate will be high. So generally, it depends on the type of condition, plus how long it's been with you and whether you are complying with your medication and whatnot.
So those who see and hear things?
Now, if you see and hear things, that's a major, what we call one of the major mental disorders. And often might be because there is a certain imbalance of chemicals in your brain. So we give medication to correct the imbalance, and you can be fine. So hearing voices, people may not see that you are hearing, but you might be responding in a way that they are wondering what is happening, or they may not realize you are seeing some strange things, but you are reacting in a way that they realize there is something wrong. But if medications are given adequately and you get the right medication and you also comply adequately, you can be very fine. In fact, those are even much easier to treat.
Humphrey, I mean, if you have somebody who is seriously depressed, I mean, as a society, I mean, we think that you have the luxury of even depression. I mean, how do you deal with such a thing?
Well, we work with some psychologists who provide some clinical psychology that support, at least for those who don't need medication, because there are people who are suffering from depression but not necessarily need medicine to get off the situation. They need somebody to talk to them. They need somebody to counsel them. And we have established groups that they also provide peer support for each other within the catchment areas that we operate. So much as we encourage them to take medication as far as their conditions might be concerned, we equally ensure that those who don't need medication but need to see psychologists are also provided with that service as well.
Well, all too soon, that's what time would allow us, and I hope that my production team will sweet talk these gentlemen and then we'll bring them, because this is just the beginning of the problem, and I'm sure there are so many other diverse ways which we can do. Even the way we educate us so that we come out with less superstition than we went in with. If you, Uncle Ebo's play is up this weekend, Bananas and Granuts, and if you want to have a laugh, this weekend, Friday and Saturday, 2 shows, 4 and 8, definitely be there. Bananas and Granuts. What a play. I went there to see. I couldn't wait till the end. I had to rush here, but the 95% that I saw was absolutely hilarious. I want to say thank you very much to Tanti's Fashion, who makes my shirts. And you can get Tanti's on 024 366 2001. 024 366 2001. I want to say thank you and big ups to all the nurses at Kolebu First Floor Maternity Ward, First Floor. Keep up the good job, and as you are bringing babies into this world, you're very important to go to do a good job. Thursdays, that's my opinion. Joy FM, Joy 99.7. And tomorrow, I am talking about religion in an uninformed world. Religion in an uninformed world. Very, very interesting. Tune in tomorrow between 2 and 3 and listen. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you very much for watching.
You're welcome.